What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode. All right, here we go. Rhaim, welcome back, man.
Man, thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I really greatly appreciate you, being here.
Nah, man, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your realness, your bluntness, your straightforwardness. And if y'all didn't see Rhaim on season 1 of Deep Dish Conversation, the season, check him out on YouTube. It's impactful, it's powerful. You can go hear more about his personal story. We'll touch on it a little bit just to give people updates, so people who may not know, but we ain't got to dive in as deep as we did before.
Yeah.
But just give us a little introduction of who you are, what you do, your background, a little bit like that.
Quick introduction. Born and raised Nashville. Single parent mother, lots of siblings. Trouble early on in my life. Found myself in juvenile in 88, 89, charged with felony murder. Caged for 26 years of my life at 7 different prisons all across the state of Tennessee. Educated myself on the inside, became aware, found my voice, paroled after 3 hearings, and that was in 2015. Been an organizer. I actually was trained on the inside to organize, and joined the Children's Defense Fund Nashville team 2016. Incorporated, founded my own organization, Unheard Voices Outreach, became the Nashville Community Bail Fund manager 2018. 2021, June, took the helm of Unheard Voices full-time, executive director, author of Save Your Own Life, Choosing the Right Path is Not Always Clear, social justice advocate, organizer, thought thinker, leader, human being.
That's it. that's Rhaim. Look, we're gonna get straight into Rhaim. Yeah. All right, when Rhaim, look, I reached out to Rhaim and said, "Hey, Rhaim, I got to bring you back because the work that you do is just too important, and I don't think people are just updated. You can never be too updated, I think, on what's going on when it comes to felonism." Right. When it comes to like legislation and what's happening with these judges, magistrates, and Rhaim was like, "Look, I got to be the bad guy. If that's what it has to be, I have to be that."
I do,
and that's okay because 1, this is a brave space. 2, this is an educational space, and not only to hold ourselves accountable, but to hold other people accountable that may be feeling that they're helping community and may be perpetuating harm.
Right.
And so here we are. And so Rhaim, I had this quote, man.
Yeah.
And like I told people, Rhaim was on season 1, and I had to go back and just listen because he dropped so many gems. But this is one of the things that really stuck out to me. And it was kind of preface about why Rhaim is doing what he's doing. And he was like, "I'm pushing back on the system because if you can send me to prison, and I got to do my time, and I got to be held accountable, why not you?"
Right.
And so who has to be held accountable now, Rhaim?
Wow. That's deep. That's deep because, it really depends on the context. But as it relates to the criminal legal system, when you think about harms that are happening in our community, one of the main things that we can all see is that there's police violence.
Right.
And what we have observed is that whenever those who have been given authority, basically to, tote weapons and use the force of law as a weapon, and when, someone's life is taken in the course of what is seen as, a police discharging his or her duty, the consequences to that behavior, when it's obvious, it's in recorded, it's seen, execution style murders. In murder, we need to understand what that means. Simply put, there's something called mens rea. There's in this actus reus, and whether I'm pronouncing it correctly or not The point is that you can have a guilty mind, and you can have what is called guilty act, and that's the physical activity. Now, if my mind is, I'm not intending to do harm or kill someone, but I do, it doesn't mean that just because I didn't intend to do it that I shouldn't be held accountable, for the simple fact that, like in my particular situation, I mean, just keeping it real and transparent, I was trying to do a robbery. I shot a gun into the floor. The bullet ricocheted and it hit someone. That person died. It didn't matter that I had no intention to kill. The fact that, I committed that act and the way the law was laid out, I had to go to prison, basically for over a quarter of a century. And when you see what's happening in the system today, when someone can be charged with, a crime, and it looks politically like, oh, wow, finally, and then they get indicted, and then the same person who was in power, a district attorney, can take and go behind the scenes, and then a deal can be made outside of the reach of the family, and someone can get a slap on the wrist for what, if you look at it, action for action, harm for harm, 10 times worse than what I did, and then get a slap on the wrist. And then, so when I talk about accountability, I'm just not talking about a district attorney here. I'm also talking about a judge. I'm talking about an African-American judge who had the authority to reject this plea. And a lot of people don't understand what's happening within the criminal legal system. They think that just because a district attorney offers something and presents it to a court and that the defense is in agreement with it, that the judges here in Nashville, particularly on the felony charges, have to agree with it, and they don't.
All right.
And so when I'm talking about accountability, I'm talking about when we elect people into positions of power and they choose to ignore, the cries and the pleas of the people who vote them into office, or if they choose to ignore those who are harmed the most, something has to be done. And when leaders who are not elected but yet see the same things as I see and they won't speak out, somebody has to speak out. So, if that makes me the bad guy, then fine. But one thing you're gonna see about Rhaim is that, I've been held accountable. If I find myself to be wrong, I'm gonna come back officially and make a statement about that. But I'm also willing to debate those who would disagree with what I have to say. Because one of the things that I believe when you're in a democracy is that you have to have civil debate. You have to have a way in which reasonable minds can come to the table and come to a conclusion that is fair and just and right. And we don't have that right now in Nashville.
One thing that I know we've spoken about and being on calls and stuff about it is not fair and right is bail.
Right.
Down in Chattanooga, they pretty much said, hey, what they doing with bail is unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And pretty much is unconstitutional over the whole state. Mm-hmm. Pretty much. Mm-hmm. Where are we with bail in Nashville and Davidson County in trying to make it more constitutional? Is there a system in place, or are they trying to do better jobs to where me and you can have drastically different bail amounts, for the same crime with the same type of criminal background?
So honestly, I can't say what's happening behind the scenes because it's not being presented to the people in a public forum.
Okay.
We don't know. My opinion is that nothing is happening. And the reason I have this opinion is because when I was working for the Nashville Community Bail Fund for those number of years, and I observed what was happening, and I discovered how the imbalance of bail amounts came about. The same processes are in place. You have a magistrate, or you have a commissioner. You get charged with an offense by a police officer. They take you before this person, and this person is supposed to look at certain criteria. There's some TCA statutes that say, look at this, look at this, look at this. And then it's really no measure for like how much the bail amount should be. Right. And then just out of nowhere, they just decide what a bail amount will be. And the problem with a bail amount, which is more or less a ransom, is that you're saying that this human being's life has to be exchanged for this amount of money because you say so. Not because the law say so, because no law said so, just because you say so. Not only that, but you're an unelected official. So these magistrates and commissioners are unelected people who are doing the bidding basically of general sessions judges who are elected, and they appoint these individuals to make these decisions. And even when they make the wrong decision, it's on the next level, like a general sessions judge. If it's like misdemeanor offense, they have to correct that, or they don't have to correct that. And so what we see within the system, there are certain judges who, if an attorney files a motion to reduce a bail, he may, and I'm saying because it's a he, may increase that bail amount. So we have defense attorneys who may be public defenders, meaning they work for Metro under the elected public defender, Chief Martisa Johnson, or they may be appointed because they are private practicing defense attorneys, and the judge will appoint them to a particular case. And so that's a whole nother situation, because when there is a $1,000 cap on cases, and let's say you're being paid at a rate of $50 an hour, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking at what, 20 hours?
Right.
And you're done.
Right.
You can't possibly be done in 20 hours, when you look at how long sometimes it takes for a case to be resolved within the Nashville system, right?
Right.
And so this is the reason why I say nothing is really being done, because we're still seeing some of the same problems. And the only way that these problems are going to be solved is the general sessions judges, in terms of the commissioners and magistrates, are going to have to say, okay, look, if we're going to set bail for any crime, any offense, and I want to say crime, any offense, because the idea of a crime, some people think it means guilty.
Right.
These are offenses. No one has been found guilty. There's a process. They're going to have to decide that this is what it's going to be. There can't be what is called, for this person, it's going to be $100. For that person, it's not going to be anything. And for this person, it's going to be $1,000. It has to be one way across the board if it's going to be even fair. And some people don't even think money should be involved in the equation. Now, that's another conversation, because personally, I do not believe personally that if this person has been charged with offense and he has the ability, or she has the ability, to pay a bail, and it happens to be money bail, and it happens to be a bonding company, that they should not be given that opportunity, because no one needs to sit in the jail longer than because
right.
just to be arrested could traumatize you for the rest of your life. And so I don't think anything is being done, and I don't think that the judges are even really listening to the people, because they don't think that the people who are crying out, really they have to answer to, because they don't think that's who their constituency is. They don't think that's who's going to be voting for them. And that's why coming, here in 2022, we're going to be, everybody is up, and so, it's like, who has the courageousness to say, I want to challenge you for your position because I believe that I can do a better job. And unfortunately, a lot of these judges that are in place, who I may have some concerns about, are not going to be challenged, because what I've learned just being, working around in this system, there is this culture where if you challenge somebody in a particular type of position and you lose, there are ramifications. There's retaliation. There's consequences. And this even happens within the public defender culture, where this person who is a public defender might be a really top-notch attorney, but going at, a case really hard and strong, the judge might have an issue with you. You saw how strong and powerful a DA could be. We have a DA that removed a mayor from office. Mm-hmm. Man, we have to understand what's going on.
Right.
And so if I upset this judge and I have to be in his courtroom or her courtroom often, and they didn't like that I filed a couple of bail reduction motions. They didn't like the fact that I filed motion to suppress evidence. They didn't like the fact that, I was filing, challenges to various processes that I felt were wrong. And so, with attorneys, public defenders, and private practicing indigent defense attorneys is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about paid attorneys. They're handcuffed.
Right.
Because they have to decide, like, am I going to practice law, or am I going to feed myself? Mm-hmm. And that's why I said, when I'm talking about being a bad guy, because we have to get into the truth of why, and this is my opinion. Like I said, I'm willing to debate anybody who has an issue with what I have to say because they won't win.
Right.
Because I happen to understand that if you are a indigent defense attorney and your livelihood is based on how many cases you get, I'm a judge and I'm handing you 10, 20, 30 cases a year or 6 months, and it's $1,000 a pop. I have a vested interest as a judge in putting people in my courtroom who can keep the situation fluid, right, so I can maintain my docket. Mm-hmm. And so if you can kind of like microwave people through my courtroom, right? Because if I'm going to trial every 2 or 3 days, I don't have, the time to handle all these guilty pleas over here. So like just 15% of the people decide to go to trial, it'll basically shut down the system here in Tennessee, in Nashville, and probably across the United States of America. Wow. Because more than 85% of people who are charged with offenses who end up with guilty verdicts, whether they plead guilty or it's basically pleading guilty. I mean, they're pleading guilty.
Right.
And they're saying they're plea bargains. But even when the plea bargain system is, in my opinion, abused, meaning you charge me with the highest level of an offense, even though the facts in the report from the police officer says that it's less than that. You charge me with the highest offense. You can get this grand jury to come back with a true bill. And so now you got this bargaining chip over my life because like in my mind, I'm knowing what happened, but then I'm thinking like, wow, the system isn't fair. And even though I may not be guilty of this highest offense, the likelihood of me being found guilty if I go to trial is high. So I'm going to plead out, even though I don't really feel what I feel, right?
Right.
And so I'm going to plead out. And so I'm helping to perpetuate the system, even though I'm feeling powerless because I don't even trust the person that's representing me because they're not even representing me. And perfect example is here recently, through, Unheard Voices has a Watchers Project.
Right.
And this is on paroles with viewing and supporting, but we also post convictions with people who are in prison.
Are they still doing the are y'all able to go in person now?
We do go in. Some judges let us in, some judges don't let us in, which is why we had to create Nashville Community Court Watch, right, because we had to expand the amount of people that were willing to come in, mask up, and be a part of putting eyes on the system. And with COVID, the Supreme Court of Tennessee has given judges a cover to give them, this discretion to decide how many people, maybe they could have in their courtrooms, right? Mm-hmm. And so this particular situation is, here we are, we're watching this case. This is the same judge, Judge Watkins, and this is my guy, so I'm gonna speak on it because he don't mind. His name was Elvin Pearson, and he's on post-conviction. His attorney, flat foot on the record, said she refused to ask the questions that he wanted to ask to the district attorney who represented him in his initial prosecution case that would have brought to light certain things that Elvin felt needed to be on the record. She told the judge, look, I'm not going to do this. And then the judge is going to say on the record, and you can go find this for yourself because Rhaim ain't going to tell no lies because my integrity is all I got because I went to the social death of life, prison, came back. And I'm just trying to build myself back up and be somebody as a credible messenger. But, man, this attorney just decided she wasn't going to do this, and she didn't. And the judge kind of like told her, well, you're the attorney, and so it's pretty much what you say. And so what you have in indigent defense here in Nashville, I'm just saying here in Nashville, is that indigent persons are not even in control of how they're represented, which is why we need client-centered representation. And we don't have that, whether it's Metro Public Defenders or whether we have indigent defense attorneys, because if my livelihood, again, is, and I'm just talking about indigent defense attorneys, is resting upon me getting cases by cases by cases, then, I gotta kind of dance in this culture. Right. And just one last caveat, that's not a caveat, but one last explosion. So we have this attorney who is practicing here in Nashville. He's on the record. He's on YouTube calling a black man the N-word.
What?
Yeah, and you can look it up. We can look it up after this if you want to. Man, this dude is responsible for, he's like number 1 or 2 or 3 in cases in terms of being appointments. He's a private practicing person,
Right.
a defense attorney. He's getting more cases than a lot of people, but lots of complaints. And so when racist individuals are able to feed their families off of your tax dollars and off of my tax dollars because a judge is appointing that person to criminal cases,
Right.
and he's basically pleading people out for the most part. If you pull the records on these guys and you see they're not even going to trial, are you telling me you get to benefit from these guilty pleas? You get to put money in your pocket. You get to make $100,000 a year, and you're just pleading people out.
Right.
You're not filing, motions. You're not challenging the system. You're not in a dual aspect of what, the origins of what attorneys, really lawyers, was really all about. It was like this face-off. It's like a fight. And so, when I say being a bad guy, somebody had to say what needs to be said. That's the truth that can be bagged up, that any reporter can go and look and find that what I'm saying is true, because I was there and I seen it for myself. I looked it up for myself, and man, it's bad.
How are things like this going unheard of?
Because people like me in the legacy media or the traditional media, they don't want us to know. Because for us to know, they can't use crime is rising as if it leads, it bleeds on the news station, so that they can keep people in this uproar of you got to stay and focus over here.
Right.
And the people who could expose it, they can't, because they taking an oath. Right. All members of the bar, whether they're prosecutors or defense attorneys or judges, they're in this like a fraternity
system.
So they took an oath. So, when you go and you try to challenge this system, you have these judges putting gag orders on attorneys. Yeah. You have these judges filing complaints to the Board of Professional Responsibility. And they're doing this because they're being exposed. You got people of color, poor white people, hidden in these jails with these indigent defense attorneys who won't even file motions for them. And then, complaints being alleged against these attorneys, nobody is knowing because they're sealing these records.
Right.
And I'm telling you, this is what I know.
Right.
And so I feel like if I have to say it, because if they won't say it, Rhaim has to, because again, bro, they gave me a life and 20-year sentence, and I didn't try to do that, man. And then this dude tried to kill, my brother, but he killed my sister. He gets 6 years. Police go do this thing. He get what, 6 years? Come on, man. I'm like, how can I feel okay with that?
Right.
When I had to face death a couple of times after what I had done because of what happens in the prison system and the violence within the physical violence. That's not even counting, the violence of the policies and the racist actions from various places within the criminal legal system. And so, yeah, I feel like I have to be the person. Who else is going to be?
Right.
And and when I know I'm speaking facts.
Right.
See, I'm not talking about truth. You can argue with truth, right, because is it your truth, his truth, or somebody else's truth? You can't argue with facts, because facts are based upon evidence that we all can observe.
Right, documented.
Exactly.
Man, and so being the bad guy, and I wouldn't even say you the bad guy, to be honest. Just being the guy that's presenting the facts to the community. How does the other side look at you? How has the response been to that?
Well,
because I think it's needed, and nobody's above being held accountable, especially if it's facts to prove it. Mm-hmm. And like you said, hey, come debate, let's have a conversation about it. If you feel what I'm saying and what I'm presenting is not factual, if you have alternative facts, present them.
Yeah. So I don't think they see me or hear me in a way, because like I said, it's only when we get opportunities like this to speak.
Right.
And I think, there are like 3 or 4 judges that I would say I can respect in terms of, because I've had at least a conversation with them. Mm-hmm. The prosecution, I really don't know because I don't encounter them much. The ones that I did, they no longer work for the prosecution, so I don't know. And I'm not saying it has anything to do with me, but you can't live a lie and say you have integrity. You can't say that you believe in justice and somebody's crying out for it and you won't even, transport their voice out of the jail into somebody's, space that can, amplify that voice. I don't really know what they think because the prosecution, I don't even know if that's where the problems lie. I think the problems lie with those who are in power positions, who are elected officials, and they see things that are wrong and they choose not to do anything about it. And whatever they choose to do, a lot of it looks like show, but there's really no real action. Because the thing about the criminal legal system is that you can know who's who just by, because it's public records. You can find out who's filing motions. Mm-hmm. You can find out who's filed, whether it's on bail or other things. Everything is available for the public to see. And you can see which judges are appointing certain attorneys. I mean, there is a list, and I can provide this list to you after at some point of who all the indigent defense attorneys are, how many cases they're getting, and what are some of the outcomes. You can kind of look for yourself in these particular cases. So right now, I'm gonna just go on the record and say that the criminal legal system is a business. And the business that the criminal legal system is, its commodity is human beings. Mm-hmm. And this system needs people to be charged with offenses to justify its budget, whether, it's the court's budget, whether it's, the jail budget, whether it's the Tennessee Department of Corrections budget. It has to have bodies. Right. And when you understand that without these bodies, these systems can't justify their budgets, we have to think about alternatives to how, we approach harm within our society. And I think that part of the problem is ignorance, in the sense that people lack knowledge that the people who vote, who pay taxes, they really have a right to establish the policies that they want, that to cause less harm, to police less, to put more in revenue or resources into prevention.
How does that happen? Because at the council level, there's many organizations, there's many different bodies of the community that says, hey, we want to take these funds out of the police department or out of this particular area of public safety and put it over here, mm-hmm. right? Still keep it in public safety, but everything mm-hmm. doesn't have to involve, in this case, the police, right? Or let's put funds over here, right? And we see time and time again mm-hmm. that our council decides not to put the money in other areas that can benefit the community. What different bodies of the community mm-hmm. say that they want, mm-hmm. and so how does that happen? How can we get these decision makers, these policy makers to listen mm-hmm. to what we want as a community, to different alternatives that are currently happening?
Yeah, and so that's when I think I was trained to do that, and I hope I can get better at it, is that there needs to be more organizing around bringing to light these decisions that these council members are making, because in the communities where I frequent the most, they're not paying attention to council members and their votes, because people are so distracted with, I got to pay my bills. I'm a parent. I'm a single parent mother. I don't know, how I'm going to, make ends meet. I'm not watching Channel 8 or whatever channel that these hearings are, being displayed. And then, while it may affect me, because I don't really know about it, I'm not thinking about it, Right. And so that means that there has to be more boots on the ground. And in order to put boots on the ground, you have to have resources. Because what I've learned, even with Unheard Voices Outreach, a very underfunded organization, because some in the community don't think the work that, we're doing is valuable work, because there's a lot of people, even in the African American community, Black American community, who believe that certain people need to be in prison. And that's indicative of the apathy that you see when so many young Black males are in West Tennessee, Hardeman County, Northwest, and Whiteville, and so much harm, so much savagery is occurring within these private prisons. And, we turn a blind eye to that. But these are the children of, a failed society. And we want to just kind of look at the person, the individual who is an unheard voice, without really looking at their humanity. Like, how did the young person grow up? Did he or she have parents? Did he or she have educational opportunities that unlock his or her genius, inspire that? Were they inspired to live? And they weren't, because we have an educational system that is so, archaic and ineffective, that people like myself, who I thought I was dumb, making D's and F's, but in reality, the system didn't know how to educate me, didn't know how to inspire me for learning. And the metrics that they use, which are the metrics that you evaluate whether or not, someone is educated, by how much they can memorize. Can you quote the preamble, or, can you remember, multiple choice and things, but you don't challenge my mind. I had a mind that had the analytical ability that if you stimulated it, I could give you something. Even if I didn't have the language, if you helped me with the language, I could find that. And this system is still the same as when I was going to school, as it is. Then it's, STEM came about, but it's not helping the people that need help the most. And so these young men and women who are in our communities making bad choices because they don't have the guidance that they really truly need, and there's no real advocate bringing an apologia for their actions.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the system doesn't take none of that into account. None.
Right.
Like, at all. None of that into account. Just like when I posed this question to another guest we had, Denzel, he does a lot of stuff with self-defense. And guns, gun laws, policies, and stuff like that. And the law doesn't take account. We talk about always, when we talk about the this criminal legal system, of the trauma that we've faced or seen or been through personally with police, right?
Right.
And so if police can have trauma, or if they can feel scared when they see me and you and feel like they need to defend themselves and make it back home to their family, how come I can't feel the same way?
Right.
And so the system doesn't take our trauma into question. Like, well, I feel like that police is going to take my life and going to take me unjustly away from my family, so I took his instead. But they won't look at it that way.
Right. And and that's so true. And so that's why education about the system has to come from those who've been through it, in collaboration with those who are fighting in it. And when you see something like that, you have to understand that the laws that are governing Tennessee are created within Tennessee's legislature. And within Tennessee's legislature, whether you have representatives and you have senators, the sad reality right now is that African Americans look to Democrats, to do their bidding. In Tennessee, Democrats have absolutely no power in terms of the legislature. Right. Republicans, ultra conservative Republicans, I would say, are running, Tennessee's legislature. And so when you have no representation, you're not going to see policies that reflect, your wishes and your desires. And so legislatures have the ability to handcuff police if they want to. But when you live in a country that promotes so-called law and order, we have to understand that mass incarceration was created by Democrats. Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, and I don't know why they elected that guy, oldest. I mean, I'm not going to get personal with this, but I'll say this. We're still recovering. We're trying to recover from what Bill Clinton did by offering, cash money incentives to lock up more people, to create more laws. And as a result, I'm just going into something like some work that I'm doing. I'm partnering with No Exceptions Prison Collective, No Exceptions, Jeannie Alexander, Theda Murphy, and we made it out of the Senate to change 51-year life sentences back to 25 years, right?
Right.
We're running into the biggest opposition that you can imagine. There was this individual in the legislature, Leader Lambert, that like everybody is so afraid of, going against something that he wants. He's a former prosecutor. They look to him to give insights around, criminal legal issues. And unfortunately, he doesn't want to give people an opportunity to live again after they mess up, even though we live in a country that says it believes in second chances. We live in a country where, everybody here, other than the indigenous people, are immigrants coming, second chances. Now, African Americans were the only people who did not come here on our own volition and choice. And so that's a different dynamic.
Right.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But so when you look at who's making these policies and who's making these laws, and why, people like you, like stand your ground doesn't apply to you and me, right? And I can't legally carry a gun,
right, because
I've been disarmed. And that's one of the reasons why these felony convictions are disarming the black community, the poor white community, and it's a certain level of design there, because now if you do it, I can put you back in prison because you can't do it because, and the same goes with, taking away voting rights.
Right.
My state is telling me, state in which I was born and raised, is telling me that, I can't vote for the rest of my life.
Right.
But I didn't storm the Capitol. I didn't commit treason. Mm-hmm. I didn't commit sedition.
Right.
But because of the situation I found myself in my third attorney, and I'm taking this time, no one ever said that, in addition to this life and 20-year sentence, you are giving up parts of your citizenship.
Right.
And you, because back in the day, the 3/5 of a man law or practice was about white slave owners having who, were considered property, like 3/5 of a man, and you put so many of them together, they had more voting power, right?
Right.
And one thing about a democracy, and the easiest way to undermine a democracy is to undermine the vote.
Right.
And when I can decide through the stroke of a pen, I can erase somebody's citizenship just because I believe, well, it's not that you believe, because people in prison used to vote. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, early 80s.
So it's not. It's a new.
It is a new thing, and this new thing. You just to get some context is that because these politicians didn't want to go to prisons and ask for votes. These politicians didn't like the idea that there were voting blocks in communities where they had a lot of prisons, right? Mm-hmm. And so to change the rules in advantage a certain group of people, you just take away the voting. But my belief, having been born in this country, is that the only way that you can take and should take, if ever, and you should, if a person forfeits their citizenship or commits treason. Other than that, no one should ever lose his or her voting rights. People in Israel never lose their voting rights. In fact, the individual that assassinated the prime minister, Rhaim, he voted in prison. They vote in Maine. They vote in, there was another one. And now in Illinois, the day you walk out of prison, you vote in. It doesn't really matter, what particular offense. But this is why education is so important. And this is why organizations like mine that are underfunded, why we can't get out and push the message that we need to push, that is a factual message, not made up. See, we're not using hyperbole and hype to tell you. I'm telling you
or just
facts.
Feelings.
Yeah. Or just feelings. I'm telling you facts that we can't vote because the people in power say that we can't vote, not because necessarily the people on the ground but agree with it.
Right.
Because they get a narrative, if at all, from those who they vote from, and says, we got to be tough. They shouldn't be doing this. You think that I shouldn't vote because I got convicted of a felony, but that's not the reason why.
Right.
That just happened recently. And so there's a lot of things happening within the criminal legal conversation and actions that people like me, if we're not speaking on it,
Right.
it's probably just hype. It's not even real. And so if you put it like this, if all of the life forms in the jungle could tell the story about what has happened over the course of time, what would the narrative be? It certainly wouldn't be what, we tell ourselves about what's happening here on this planet.
Right.
And the same thing goes. The victor gets to tell the story.
Right.
And so, I'm a survivor of the prison industrial complex. I'm also considered someone who, a victim in the sense that my sister was murdered. And so you have those who are weaponizing victimization and helping to create policies, and who are primarily white female voices influencing law in Tennessee legislature, while the majority of those who are actually murdered are coming out Shelby County, Davidson County. But you have these voices of people who haven't even had a family member killed. They just advocates, they getting jobs, and their voices are louder than those of us who actually have experienced it. And for myself, I experienced it on both sides.
Right.
And so when people can make policies who really don't have direct experience, it's going to always be unfair.
Right. And that's due to the lack of resources, like organizations like the Unheard Voices can't get. They don't have a machine.
Aren't very popular. And because, our work is basically about liberation, because when you help somebody who's been in prison for 10, 20, 25 years get out of prison, whether it's Cyrus Wilson, whether it's Don Clemens, those are most popular people that, Unheard Voices built some teams around, Choosing Justice. We had people like Davy Tucker, American Baptist College, No Exceptions, Vanderbilt Prison Project. We're coming together. We're actually collaborating to get individuals out of cages.
Right.
And that work isn't seen as, valuable work. And, I want to speak on the record about, we put so much money into bail, like donating, like, and something I had to say to the people, is that like it's a million times harder to get somebody out of prison than it is to get someone out on bail. And my analysis is that some of us believe that as long as you don't get the guilty verdict, I feel comfortable donating to this cause like it's bail, because, at least you're not guilty yet.
Right.
But the moment they ascribe guilt to you,
people throw you away.
And like you never existed. And then you come to ask and they say, well, I really want to, help with the kids, and they used to be kids.
Right.
I know you have bought into this false narrative that because this person is 18, 19, 20 and whatever, that somehow their childhood doesn't count anymore.
Right.
And yet, if you with wealth get arrested, the first thing outside of bail is you're getting a psychological evaluation. They're going to make sure that your mindset and the things that happened to you as a child are going to be made a part of the record. And as you said, some of those things don't even matter, the traumas and things like that. How can it matter if 85+% of those who represent, these individuals charged with offenses plead them out? They don't have a trial, so certain things never are ever going to be on the record.
Right.
And justice is not defined by the facts and the truth of, or the facts of, like what actually happened. Justice in the judicial system in Nashville is determined by the process. Well, did you get your rights read? Yeah. Okay. Did you get a preliminary hearing? Yeah. Okay. Does your attorney, file motion of discovery for you? And the processes is how they define justice. It absolutely has nothing to do with delving into the causation of why a person made a bad choice.
So what is justice to you then? What does that mean? Because I know justice is dynamic, and I think we all say sometimes we want justice, but justice can mean different things to different people.
Right.
And so asking you, Rhaim, what does justice mean to you?
So in this moment, because I think justice is a fluid thing, but in this moment, justice is in the context of the criminal legal system is what I'm talking about, because also there's an economic justice that I'm not talking about in this moment, is that if you charge me with an offense and I get arrested, you afford me the same things as you would afford a person with wealth. Because if you do that, you will be able to see psychologically that at that time, that if I did actually do it, doesn't make me guilty. Because remember I told you about men is rare, act is rare.
Right.
Okay, you can get and build my record before I even reach the point to where a judge is putting me in a situation to where I have to pick a jury. Justice looks like if like this family that was harmed, if, let's say if it's someone harmed, and they say, I don't want this to happen.
Right.
It looks like the DA saying, okay, I heard this family here, and this family doesn't want this person going to prison for 20, 30, 40 years.
Right.
They want to work something out. And so we're bringing Rafa into the situation where we're talking about restorative justice.
Right.
And then we have these conference circles where healing circles, we can even call them justice circles, where community is involved in the process about what is the appropriate action here. We're providing counseling to people who've been harmed because the system is having all of this money, right, and giving them that space to where they can really come back to a place to where they can, without emotion, say, okay, this is how I feel about what happened. And then justice is this choice. You go through the traditional system, or you go through the community system. So justice would afford an opportunity for a choice.
Right.
And so the choice would be a combination between people who have been harmed and those who caused the harm. That's what justice would look like. And then what this does is it takes this abstraction out, which is called the state, which creates these laws that don't have no regard for poor people. And then that force cannot be imposed upon, poor people.
Right.
And so I think that we have enough intelligence that we can work these things out and come to decisions that everyone can be happy with. It didn't take 26 years for me to change and to transform.
Right.
And with all due respect, to the family that I harmed, I can't change that. But the one thing that I can tell you that is true, that I fought to be a better human being from the moment that I woke up in 1989 after attempted suicide, in a prayer, in God, asking, like, hey, if you give me a chance to survive this thing, I'm gonna come out a better person. And I've been working towards that the whole time. Don't want to be perfect. I'll never be perfect, and I made mistakes, and as recent as this year, but
right,
I'm still on the path.
Right. Well, Rhaim, look, I don't know. We can keep going. We can keep going.
Yeah.
But I want to bring you back, especially going into next year with the judges. 2022 coming up and all the general sessions and the DA, everybody's up. And so I want to bring you back, but I also want to plug Unheard Voices, and people donate resources to Rhaim so he could, combat felonism.
Right.
And I appreciate you, man. And I can't wait for this to come out, man.
Yeah.
And just thank you for your time and thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah.
And we gonna be, y'all gonna be seeing a lot more Rhaim. Trust me, he gonna be the heard voice for unheard voices on the Deep Dish Conversation platform. So I appreciate you, man. I love you, man.
Thank you,
and just thank you for the human being that you are and that you're growing and learning to become even better every day.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity just, to be in your space. And I see you growing as a leader, a thought leader, an action leader, an organizer, and, putting this out there where the people can make decisions and have a conversation. And, I would hope that in the future you host a debate around some of these issues and bringing people together in the same space in a talking piece format, whereas one voice doesn't get to dominate. And then we lay it all out, and then we see who's speaking what's what. Right. But, in terms of support for the Unheard Voices outreach, if they go to our site, unheardvoicesoutreach.org, you can actually see the work that we've been doing. And, You can Google my name, Rhaim Buford. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Unheard Voices is on Facebook. It's on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can see the consistency of the work that we're doing. And while it may not be popular work in this moment, we're not limited to just what, we have presented. It's just to have the opportunity to come to the community and provide a certain message that is different than what you're going to hear coming from other organizers. And I respect all grassroots organizers, but what I don't respect is when they give passes to their friends who are elected officials, and when they give passes to people who are in positions of power who have caused harm, and they won't call that out. I don't respect that. And while they may say, well, who are you? I'll say I'm you. It's just that I got caught. I did my time. And, I'm coming back, I'm second chance, born again, for real. Like what y'all really say y'all believe in.
Right.
Whether, I'm saying I can go a whole nother, so many subjects. I'm gonna shut that down, but
you're gonna be back. You're gonna be back.
Man, I want to know, and I want your audience to say what they really feel. Like, I really want to know what they think.
Yeah.
But thank you, brother. I appreciate this. I greatly appreciate this. This is an honor. I greatly respect what you're doing.
Thank you, and I respect you, and we're gonna see you soon, man.
All right.
All right.
Good work.